Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chang Alfares with the top economic reports from around the world. Coming up, Qatar prepares air-conditioned stadiums for the 2022 World Cup. Japan ill-prepared to feed new wave of Muslim tourists. And guerrilla tourism boosts local economy and guerrillas. First, the headlines. Israeli shares dipped on a two-month low on Tuesday as the war between the IDF and Hamas intensified. The TA25 Blue Chip Equity Index declined 1% on Tuesday at the close in Tel Aviv, the lowest level since March 9th. On Wednesday, however, benchmark indices all increased as blue chips rose 0.9% and the Tel Aviv 100 rose 1%. Israeli stocks have historically recovered from retreats caused by security concerns. After the TA25 sank to an 8-month low during the Second Lebanon War in July 2006, it ended the year at almost a record high. But while the escalation continues, Israeli industries will suffer a shortage of workers and raw materials, power outages, and transportation issues, which could impact the economy. Citigroup is close to paying $7 billion to settle allegations it sold substandard mortgages ahead of the financial crisis. The settlement with the U.S. Justice Department could come as early as next week and is right in between the $4 billion originally offered by Citigroup and $10 billion sought by the government. A handful of cases relating to bank conduct ahead of the 2008 financial crisis are still pending before the Justice Department. Faulty mortgage securities such as Citigroup's helped fuel the housing bubble in the mid-2000s and contributed to its collapse. South Korean's won fell to the lowest level in more than a week as a drop in equities sapped demand for riskier assets. The won's drop followed comments by the incoming finance minister, who said the exchange rate should be set by the market and sharp fluctuations are undesirable. On July 4th, the Korean currency reached its strongest level since 2008. The decline ensued as investors who had expected the new finance chief to express support for the stronger won wound down their short dollar positions. América Móvil, the telecommunications giant of magnate Carlos Slim, said Tuesday it will slash its majority share of the Mexican market to below 50%. The company said it wanted to stop being a dominant economic force, though its decision came after the Chamber of Deputies agreed to trim the power of telephone and TV monopolies. América Móvil includes the fixed-line company Telmex, which controls 80% of its market, and mobile phone carrier Telcel, which controls 70%. América Móvil has 292 million cell phone users in 26 countries, nearly 74 million of them in Mexico. Though the ambitious telecom reform greatly trims Slim's monopoly, it may not be able to limit the political clout of Televisa and TV Azteca, which broadcast to 94% of the national audience.
Si bien en telecomunicaciones.
If you look at telecommunication, the terms are very clear and specific to guard against a telephone and internet monopoly. But in the case of broadcasters, it allows an even further concentration in free and paid television and in radio.
Director General of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, in Beijing called for tougher government action from all countries on tobacco control. Beijing pledged in 2008 to prohibit smoking in most public venues, including government offices, but no smoking signs are frequently ignored. China is the world's largest consumer of cigarettes, with more than 300 million smokers, as more than 50% of men smoke. Awareness of the health effects is low, and the tobacco monopoly has contributed as much as 10% of total tax revenue for China's central government.
Because every government worldwide, including China, need to balance the income and the expenditure. Oftentimes, tobacco companies, especially the big tobacco, they put a lot of pressure on government, and also to say that any tobacco control measures would affect the country's economy, affect the income of farmers. Of course, those were their argument. WHO do not support those arguments. We would encourage countries to take the most robust action in controlling tobacco.
Well, temperatures are still rising ahead of the 2014 World Cup finale. Qatar, the 2022 host, has prepared special cooling systems for public places to keep temperatures in check. Roth has the details.
Though the 2014 World Cup tournament is still yet to be decided, Qatar, host of the 2022 FIFA tournament, is testing open-air zones cooled by solar-powered air conditioners. The cooling will be a necessity for fans and players alike, given that summer temperatures can swelter.
The temperature outside ranges from 48 to 50 degrees with a high level of humidity. Here, the temperature is suitable for us to watch the match. The temperature is good.
We had a challenge, which is to try different cooling types and technologies for public places. Thanks to God, I can say that we succeeded in this mission. The temperature inside the fan zone is about 13 degrees less than the temperature outside. We had this challenge and we managed to respond to it.
With the competition being played in such a hot country, many have called for the summer tournament to be played in the winter in 2022, when temperatures can drop to below 20. Qatar won the hosting duties of the tournament in December 2010, and air-conditioned stadiums were an expectation of the decision-makers. Doha has made a 500-person space that fits the profile, but needs to get bigger if they want to keep everyone cool. And not everyone is convinced.
I think it could work for a small area, but for the World Cup, for example, with similar methods, it seems to me a bit complicated and a little unrealistic to think we can cool a stadium with 40 or 50,000 people.
To add to the heat, there are claims abounding that bribery is at the center of the decision to let the desert country host the World Cup. Those accused deny any wrongdoing. As well, nearly 1,000 workers building infrastructure for the event have died in what have been described as unsafe and even slave-like conditions.
As an ever-increasing number of wealthy Muslims travel to Japan, few restaurants answer to the dietary needs of this growing wave of tourists. Here's the story.
Finding somewhere to eat in Japan as a Muslim can be difficult. This is one of the few restaurants to offer halal meat.
It would be nice if we can try Japanese food, but most that we can find something like Indian food, Turkish, Malay foods, which I don't think that I come here for that.
Japan's Muslims only number about 100,000, but more and more tourists are coming here. Visa requirements for Malaysia and Thailand were relaxed last year, and Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim-majority country, is slated to follow shortly. This Sri Lankan restaurant owner hopes to cash in on the influx. He's Christian, but has opted to turn his restaurant halal. Not easy in a country where sauces often contain alcohol and pork. He says around half his customers are now Muslims, but he still has to give the other half what they want.
I'm doing my very best to make this place for 100% halal, but I find difficult, without alcohol, it's very difficult to do business in Japan.
Seminars like this are being held across Japan to help hotel and restaurant owners learn how to cater for Muslims. Crucial with the countdown on to the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo.
25 to 28% of athletes are Muslims. They'll be asking for halal meals. So some caterers here, potential caterers, are already looking at how to prepare meals for the Olympic Games.
And ambitions are high. Japan hopes to attract 20 million visitors for the Games from all countries and all religions.
And now for a different kind of tourism, as wildlife enthusiasts pay a high price for the privilege of getting closer to the world's largest primates in Uganda. And while gorilla tourism is a boon for the economy of local communities, it also helps preserve the species. More in this report.
These emerald hillsides are a mecca for wildlife enthusiasts who flock to this remote corner of southwestern Uganda for one thing: gorillas. The forest is home to an estimated 400 mountain gorillas, roughly half the world's population, including several families which have become used to human presence. Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are the only countries in the world where you can see these mammoth primates. That privilege comes at a price, though. Roughly $600 for a single-entry gorilla trekking permit.
Ça, c'est sûr que déjà, ça fait passer la pilule un peu.
It makes it a bit easier, and we are willing to pay that kind of money because we know that a large part of those resources are reinvested in the preservation of the species. And we also felt like we'd experienced something very exclusive.
Après, on a aussi l'impression de vivre quelque chose d'assez exclusif.
Threats to the mountain gorilla, including war, habitat destruction, and disease. were once thought to be so severe that the species could become extinct by the end of the 20th century. But the population has increased significantly in the last 3 decades, largely due to improved conservation efforts. Gorillas are not the only ones benefiting. Tourism dollars have boosted the economy of local communities that surround the park. In addition to income from hotels, souvenir shops, and jobs in the park, communities also receive 20% of park entry fees and $5 per gorilla trekking license.
Although it can't cover the whole community, but at least, yeah, there is some improvement. Because most of the people used to stay in grass thatched, now they are living in iron sheet. So tourism is doing a great thing. Yeah.
And yet it can be difficult to balance species survival with the needs of a still impoverished region. Human-animal conflict remains. Animals can destroy crops and property, while destruction of the natural habitat and human population growth have pushed people into closer contact with the gorillas, causing transmission of human diseases. Efforts to mitigate these problems include the creation of buffer zones, income-generating activities for local residents, and community health programs. But there is still far to go.
The communities are major stakeholders. They live with these gorillas. They have lived with these gorillas for ages before conservation started. And some of them still look at that forest as their forest, where they use it to access resources like firewood, like medicine. And so we thought that it was very, very important that we still work with the communities and show them that this is still your resource. These gorillas are still for your benefit.
While tourism is far from the silver bullet against poverty, the search for sustainable conservation practices may be the only way to ensure that these communities and their gorilla neighbors continue to share this remote paradise.
And now for a discussion of a variety of articles collected just for you in Media Watch. And Daniel Roth joins us for Media Watch. So, I understand that we're talking about... What are we talking about?
Thomas Piketty.
That's right.
The Wall Street Journal picked up since people have been buying books on Kindle, you can track a lot more about people's reading habits and things like this. It turns out that, so a book like The Goldfinch, 98% of people finished that book, people who downloaded it to Kindle.
Right.
There's a lot of books, though, that people don't finish, and one of them is a book we've been talking about a lot on this show, which is Capital in the...
Months and months.
Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. So 98% of people...
bought it and did not actually read it.
Yeah, but 2.4% of people finished this book.
Oh, finished it, I see.
2.4% of people finished this book entirely. You're talking about... a 700-page book. One of the books that people are talking about is like the decade's most important book for changing society.
Right.
That 97.5% of people bought or downloaded and just simply didn't read.
See, this makes it very interesting to maybe understand, like, who is buying this book? I mean, are we talking about, college students? Are we talking about economists? That could really actually enlighten us a little bit more about why are they not reading this book? Why are they not finishing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one answer is it's dense. It's huge, and a lot of the information, the overarching lessons it's out there in the media. People know it, so they get bored, I think.
It's not like a novel. You don't have to finish it. You don't have to read every single page of it.
But there's so much detail, and there's so much important stuff about the future of the economy, which actually brings us to the next subject. ABC News had this piece. Larry Page of Google was talking about the new economy will require us to decouple wealth and labor. Essentially, we're going to have to be okay with people working part-time and being able to survive well. Why? Because we have the technology to do so, which means there's less and less employment available, which means we have to stop coupling employment with survival. We have to start creating scenarios where people can live, spend lots of leisure time, work part-time.
More vacation. Amazing. This sounds rather utopian, though.
It is rather utopian, but it may, if we can get our act together, Larry Page says, if we can start to think about what that future looks like and start to change the culture around labor and around economics, we can start to imagine a world where people are embarking on their dreams and kind of, doing work that is a passion for them while...
Or just like, the very few that sort of control the wealth?
Well, so this is a great question. Will this kind of expand to all people around the world, or will it remain just a choice in a select few countries or a select few classes?
Right,
It's a very interesting question.
And when will robots take over?
Yes, that's the next question. When will the robots take over?
In fact, Daniel, I'm not so sure. Maybe you are a robot.
I am. I'm you.
No. Thank you very much for joining us, Daniel Roth. That's a wrap for us at The Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at i24 News. I'm Benjamin Chang. Join us again tomorrow for more on the economy.